Welcome to this month's iTWO costX coffee break webinar. My name is Herman, and today I'll be presenting the topic of extracting quantities from a BIM model. This will form part of a series, and it's part one of that series, and we'll be focusing on using object mode as well as BIM templates. iTWO costX is our feature software that comes in a whole host of different options with different functionalities. And if you are new to costX, you might be asking why you would need costX. At its core, iTWO costX is a measurement tool, both from 2D and 3D workbooks. This measurement tool, or these measurements, are then integrated into our estimation workbooks, point number 4 in this slide. And with that, there's an auto revisioning tool that actually helps you handle revisions to drawings and automatically updates the workbooks that has been live linked to your measurements. Both of these are then integrated to a report writer that can publish both drawings that's been marked up as well as the estimation. So that could be a cost plan or a bill of quantities or whatever you use the workbooks for, and this gives you a complete paperless estimation solution that also enables you to actually collaborate with your team if you are deploying it on a network. costX is interoperable and compatible with a whole host of different solution or other softwares. From an import point of view, we support more than 20 different file types, anything from JPEGs and PDFs, DWGs to native Revit files, IFCs and DWFX files. All of this brought into iTWO costX, which is a database environment, and with that then the export options, some of which I've already mentioned, the reports that can be published in a PDF or maybe exported to Excel, but we also provide an open API so that you can actually link and integrate costX with other pieces of the puzzle or other softwares that you might be utilizing for other functions. Last month, James took us through a great webinar of useful iTWO costX shortcuts, so all about the efficiencies. The topics that he covered was the keyboard shortcuts on the drawing side in the different various measurement or the various different measurement modes, the keyboard shortcuts in the workbooks, and the general keyboard navigation and shortcuts. Now, to revisit or see any of our previous webinars, you are probably at the location where you see them right at this moment as you're watching this one, so just browse around there. Otherwise, we do have a YouTube channel, and our website also has all of these. This month we'll be concentrating or covering the topic of extracting quantities from a BIM model. It is quite a meaty topic, and obviously a topic that's really relevant at the moment, seeing where BIM and 3D is going. So what we'll do is sort of almost like start at the beginning, but we'll explore a little bit around object mode measurement, the BIM templates that are in the system already, and both of these are really easy quantity extraction or enables easy quantity extraction from the model. So without further ado, let me get into costX. So I am in iTWO costX at the moment. Well, I've just opened it actually, and today we are jumping straight into it, but sort of skipping a few steps. And it's not to say that obviously we're trying to run before we can walk, but some of the topics that we normally start off with on the training has also been covered previously in some webinars, so if you want to revisit those, I would also encourage that. But the segment that would sort of go before what we are going today is just about navigation in the model, so moving the model around, exploring the model properties and all of that. So obviously when you get to the measurement, there's an assumption that you maybe know some of that already. It is quite straightforward and quite basic and quite intuitive in a sense as well, so do get familiar with that as well, in one way before you start measuring, but also as you start measuring, that sort of those skills develop. Alright, now I've mentioned that I've already added this drawing. As you can see, it's already in the viewing pane. And this is done in the drawings ribbon. So to start with our measurements, we'll go to our dimensions ribbon. Now you'll notice on this 3D model, because it is a 3D model and there are certain objects available, object mode is automatically selected. For those of you that are familiar with the 2D measurement side, you would know that for basic drawings as well as DWGs, you would have line and point mode available, and then on a 3D drawing, object mode becomes available. So if it hasn't been selected, you can select it, but you'll see that in my case it is selected, and you see that that it is grayed out at the back, so the selection being quite obvious. Now, creating a dimension group in 3D view is slightly different than what we are used to, whereas traditionally on the 2D drawings, you would create a dimension group from this left-hand side. There's also other ways where you can maybe import a dimension group list from a CSV file, or you can also have pre-populated standard dimension groups, or even copy dimension groups. Use one of your previous projects as a template. Now, in a model, because there's so much more object properties in the model, the idea is that some of those properties will actually inform your dimension group name and how that dimension group is measured. So how we create, or the easiest way really to create a dimension group, is to go to any of the objects that you're looking to create, like this roof, and we right click on it, and the second option is to create that dimension group. So we click create, and then we can start by typing out the name. We'll just call it roofs, and we'll put it in a folder as well called roofs. Now we'll measure this as an area, so I'll leave most of this the same, but then the benefit of these properties and the object mode, because what we are trying to find is extract some of the geometry that's embedded within the model already, so we don't have to go and physically show costX where the extents are. A lot of those properties are in the model already, so to find that and to find what we are wanting to use, we come to the tab over here that says BIM Dimensions, and for both the area and the volume, we would be able to define that based on the object properties. So we click on the ellipsis button next to the area, and in our field for area, we go to our object properties. Here you'll see all of the object properties listed, and here you'll see the area as well as the volume available. So for the area, we can just double click on that area and it selects it, and the same for the volume. The volume already has a definition. We can override that by clicking on the volume field. We then click close to close out of the expression editor, and you'll see those updated accordingly. And once we click insert, it will then add that dimension group for us. And now in object mode, the way, or the first way to measure, is really just to select that item. So with a left click, you can click on that item, and you'll see it measures the quantity, or actually extracts the quantity, as well as the volume as we defined it. So that is essentially a type of mapping exercise where we've mapped those properties to the relevant item. So you can continue on this trend, and what we'll do next is just revisit some of the display sort of settings that takes us through and helps us navigate through the model. So the first option that we have is to click on an item and actually show or hide specific items. So over here, if I wanted to isolate that roof, I can just click on it and right click to show only the roof. The next option, if I just right click to show all the objects again, the next option is to use the model tree, which is located on the left hand side. And let's suppose I want to measure these doors. I can filter all the doors, and then I can filter them down to the specific doors if I would like to do that. In this case, I'll just keep all the doors filtered. And remember, if you use the model tree or the layers, you have to go back to the drawing tab to be able to measure. Now I've got the dimension group selected, that's why it's showing it to me. But again, to create these objects or a new dimension group, I can again then just right click and say create a dimension group. I've selected the double door, and I'll put that in a folder called doors. In this case, if I wanted to measure, I'll just measure a count item, so I'll update this accordingly. And this is an easy one. I don't really have to bother much about, well, I could if I wanted to measure maybe a door frame or those things, but for the sake of today I won't go into that. But you'll see how that can be done in the next example where I'll be measuring the windows. So in this case I just click the insert button. This is just a count item, so the easy way to do that as well in object mode still is to say import objects, and then I can choose which one it is that I want to use. In this case the double door, which is the type of door, and if I click that, you'll see all three of those doors are imported. Okay, then we can use layers as well. So again, if I just show all the objects again, I can also use the layers tool, and in this case I'll actually choose to switch all the layers off and turn on the layers for windows right at the bottom. Okay, I could have also used the invert function by turning this off and then inverting it. And again, back to the drawings tab before proceeding with my measure. Then I right click, create dimension group. For these doors, we'll make it for these windows, we'll make it a little bit more complicated. So for these windows, we'll make it a little bit more complicated. So we'll just add windows, and then we'll also put it in a folder of windows. And this can then, again, depending on the information that we have, be measured either as an area or a count. Let's measure it as an area. So again, we go to our BIM dimensions. What we actually do in this case, let's add a custom quantity as well for the lintels that'll go above those windows. So we can click insert, choose these lintels. Unit of measurement will be meters, and that should do it. And in the measure dimensions, you'll see those lintels are then added. And now to go and define these, so we define the width and the height, so we can go over here, and again in the drop down, go to our drawing, in the area. So in the drawing properties, choose to not use the default for these width and height fields, or maybe the length field rather is the one that we'd be looking for. So that one is, I think, already defined as the property, BIM property. So after adding the lintels as a custom quantity, I can then jump to my BIM dimensions, where I can then go and qualify all these different properties. I'll just activate the height one as well, or not use the default one for that, and then go into these different fields, again utilizing the object properties that's embedded in those items. So for the length item, that's probably going to be my width of the window. Height, I'll use the height field, and then for my lintel, which will be at the bottom, I can actually use the width plus 0.3 plus 0.3 to calculate that. And then the wall area, when I close out of the expression editor, you'll see the wall area automatically takes the length and the height, so that should be calculated automatically. So when I click the insert button, it will then insert that dimension group for me, and then to measure this, I can import items as well, or count these items as well by measuring an area. So instead of clicking on the item, I click on the gray and I say import object in an area, and then I basically draw a box around that covers all of the items that I want to import, and that will import all of those items. Now I didn't define the area here, so what I actually wanted to do is display the count by default. I'll click update that, and there's the 30 number of windows that I've measured, but you'll see when I hover over it and when I hover over them individually, it shows me the length, the height, the wall area, as well as the lintels, and any of those properties can be used as the default display over here. Okay, and then the last way to measure as well, so again just turning all of these items back on, and then going to the model tree, turning on the different ceilings. One other way of measuring as well, if I go to quickly create a dimension group, if I actually check these dimension group, these object properties, I can see it's a 600 by 600 ceiling. So what I'll do is that I'll actually use in my description. So I'll just call that 600 by 600 grid ceiling, and that will be in a new folder called ceilings, measured in an area. And for my BIM dimensions, again I might have some information with regards to the area. For costX area measurements, the perimeter is normally the length field. So if I want to, I can also map that. So if I just close out of here, and for length, I'll put the perimeter in there. And then click the insert button, and then the last option with regards to import is to use a custom selection. So if for instance you want to measure your level 1 and level 2 ceilings into different fields, so this is the ground level, so it's level 0. So if I only want to import that, I'll click OK, and there you'll see it's only measured the bottom floor, and then you can do that same thing for the top floor. So there are different ways to filter it as well, create a custom selection according to the object properties available. Okay, so after completing the sort of more manual way of object mode, the next mode we're looking at is called templates or BIM templates, and this is sort of the next step prior to the final step where we then create a template ourselves, and this is called the model map. So the next step, as I said, is called the BIM template, and a way that we might do that is in the same dimensions tab. Instead of manually measuring, you'll see there's an option here that says import, and then there's two options called BIM template at the top and using a model map at the bottom. So we'll look at BIM templates today. And a BIM template, any of the imports really, or both of the import options, only imports the geometries and the objects that are displayed. Okay, so you can do it step by step as well. Have a look when I right click over this object to show its object properties. You'll see that these objects all have unique identifiers. Okay, and that's really actually really important, and the reason being that there's some checks happening in the background that we are not too aware of as a user, but it essentially identifies the object using this user ID, and that ensures that there are no double ups or duplicate measures. Okay, so most of the templates that are available under the BIM template options, I'll show you those in a second. Let me just again filter. We'll do the walls because we haven't done anything with the walls yet, so I'll again filter those walls out. And remember that this filtering or selection can also happen either using the layers or the model tree, but the import will also again only work in the drawings under the drawings tab. Then we go to import and we choose to use import using a BIM template. You'll get a warning to say that there's some hidden objects, so just essentially what I just told you, that only the visible objects will be imported. So we just click yes to proceed with that, and then you'll see a list of the objects. You'll notice the location where these templates are saved. So if it doesn't automatically open over here, you can go and find it over here. And then there's a few templates that we just can quickly briefly run through. Sometimes on a model map, on a BIM model, you might find that there are then you might get a warning that says that there's certain duplicate IDs that exists. This template will import only those duplicates, so it's easy for you to find them and identify if they actually impact you. Then there's a few other software specific ones. There's elemental codings, a QSID element that can be used. This is very handy if you want to structure your workbook based on your dimension group folders, because it uses those elemental codes as groups or as folders. And then there's the Revit General one, which is essentially just the basic one. It's pretty much like a schedule of quantities that is produced from Revit. And then there's one that only identifies the user-defined items. This is again if you export the schedule of the model and add any of your own user-defined properties to it. So we'll use the Revit General one. This is the most generic and basic one. And you essentially just select it and click OK. And have a look at the walls that it creates, where it essentially creates a description, well, the folder first of all, from the coding and from the object properties. So if I just open that object properties of that wall, you'll see that the walls has been used as the folder, and the cavity, or it's essentially a sort of amalgamation of the basic wall and the level 2 and level 3 descriptions that is then created with the quantities for each of those extracted. So in this case it worked great because it was the area that it was looking for and it found those areas, but again, and this is what sort of leads into the next extraction, because this is all a fully automatic extraction, and you could extract the whole model in one go. If you show all objects and just repeat that import process, it will import the whole model. The benefit of doing it sort of step by step using the filters is obviously it gives you greater insight, and it forces you to investigate the model a little bit, so that you can find little nuances and issues. For instance, items like areas where you may want to investigate if the windows has been deducted from the walls, or if you're measuring slabs, if the openings has been deducted, and so forth and so on. And then lastly, we also have what we call a drawing file optimization document. We'll maybe cover this in a bit more detail next time, but it's essentially a document that we produce that help designers help you. We encourage you to share that with any of your designers. It just helps them in terms of grouping and exporting from most software packages, because the best performance, even though we do support native Revit now, I would probably say the best performance with regards to models is still DWFX, so that's the one that we would probably for the most part suggest, but IFC is also supported, so it really depends on what you have. But we do look forward to the next time where we are with you for customizing these templates in what we call model maps. Thank you so much for joining us again this time around. See you next time. Cheers.